Andrew's in Acton in London. Andrew, a very good morning to you.
Good morning. So, very interesting listening to all of that, and also picking up one of the points you made and about what Boris Johnson said recently. I can actually tell you the more recent statement he made that was in the Daily Telegraph on the 26th of June 2016. He wrote an article, and it included this passage. British people will still be able to go and work in the EU, to live, to travel, to study, to buy homes, and to settle down. As the German equivalent of the CBI has very sensibly reminded us, there will continue to be free trade and access to the single market. And then he said the only change, and it will not come in any great rush, is that the UK will extricate itself from the EU's system of legislation, the corpus of law enacted by a European Court of Justice. So that's what he was saying just a few days after the referendum result was going to be the position, and obviously what he thought should be the position. So that is a million miles from no deal.
Andrew, let me ask you this. Yesterday it was announced that the government's going to be putting another 2.1 billion quid into contingency planning for a no-deal Brexit. That adds up to over £6 billion that British governments have put in to trying to mitigate the effects of Brexit one way or another. Now, that is a very large sum of money when you consider some of the cuts that have been made in recent years because of austerity. And yet, given the severity that a no-deal Brexit is likely to have, it is only a drop in the ocean and will not prevent possibly hundreds of thousands of jobs being lost. I ask you, therefore, if you're a Democrat, but maybe you voted Remain like I did, if you're a Democrat, is this all a price worth paying? And if you voted to leave, if you're a Brexiteer, are you on any level now beginning to get buyer's remorse? Because you have ideologues on both sides. We know that. We have people who feel deeply, passionately pro the EU. We have people in this country who actually identify as Europeans. I don't. I identify as a Brit and as an Englishman and as a half Jew. But we have people who really do. Then on the other side, we have people who are absolutely ideological on the grounds of sovereignty, regaining control of our borders and so on and so forth. But what this really comes down to in the end, and this is why I voted Remain mainly, is about people's capacity to put bread on the table for their families. And if we leave without a deal, that capacity for many people will likely, I can't prove it because it's looking into the future, but will likely be severely reduced.
Yeah. Matt, let me tell you. So imagine this on the side of the bus. Let's spend $6 billion on the NHS. No. Let's spend it on no deal. I mean, it's just ridiculous how different the position now is to what was sold at the time of the referendum. And you say, what do people who voted Leave think? What do people who voted Remain think? I actually voted to Leave myself. But I didn't vote for this, not in a million years. And it was perfectly clear from what people like Michael Gove and Boris Johnson in that little bit I just read you from the Daily Telegraph in June 2016. Nobody was talking about no deal at that time. And it's a complete travesty. They're now all turning around and saying, everybody voted for no deal. They didn't. They just didn't.
So, buyer's remorse for you?
For me, absolutely. No, I've had buyer's remorse for about the last 18 months. I've just watched in growing horror at what Mrs May was doing, and now, kind of frankly, almost even worse, what Boris Johnson is doing. But they're both, what they're not doing is thinking what actually is in the best long-term interest of this country.
But how, given you voted for Brexit, you're a Brexiteer in that sense, or you were, how could Brexit have been delivered in a way that would have satisfied you?
For me, well, to answer that, I have to tell you why I voted to Leave, because I thought that there was a sort of a divergence of interest between the UK and the rest of the EU, because we are not Eurozone members. And then it would be better to have a slightly looser arrangement, because I thought that they in the Eurozone are going to have to go towards political integration. And we don't want that, but we do want to be fully subscribed to the economic aspects, especially the single market. And that's why, do you remember people like Owen Paterson before the referendum? Only a madman would vote to leave, would want to leave the single market.
Former Secretary of State for Northern Ireland.
Yes. And that's what people like this were saying at the time. Even you had people like Nigel Farage saying, people say Norway is so terrible. What's wrong with Norway? The sort of implication was at the time of the vote that there were lots of arrangements which would involve a very close relationship with the EU. And yet now, 2-3 years on, they're saying, no, it's got to be a no deal. We have to leave the single market. We have to leave the customs union. And none of these people, by the way, are people who are going to lose their jobs if we leave the single market.
And this is called group polarization, where you get people who are very loosely bound together in some way, and they spend time with each other, and their position hardens. And you can thank Cass Sunstein for that, and you can see or hear my podcast interview with Cass Sunstein, the How To Academy podcast series that I'm presenting, and you can go to the Global Player to find that and lots of other podcasts, and you can also find it on my Twitter account at Matthew Statham.